This is my AK-47. It is a WASR 10, and I paid $600 for this rifle. This is my AR-15. It is a BCM, and I paid $1,500 for this rifle. The AK-47 has the reputation of being one of the most reliable rifles in the world, but I think a lot of that comes from mil-spec rifles and definitely more expensive rifles than a WASR. So I want to see which of these two rifles is more reliable, the cheap AK-47 or the expensive AR-15. Just for the record, both of these rifles are super reliable. I've never had a problem with either one of them. So first, I'm just going to shoot a few rounds out of each of these to show you guys that they do work. And with the AR-15, I'll be using some full power brass cased 5.56 since that's probably what it prefers. And then for the AK, I have some Red Army Standard and some Wolf Military Classic, which both of those run fine in that gun. So let's do this, and then we'll start getting these guns dirty. And the AK. So I'm not sure if the sights are on, but they both work just fine. So let's start getting them dirty and see how they do. So I'm just using what I find around the property out here, and I'm gonna start with just some regular dirt. I found some on the wood line here, and I'm just gonna drop some over the action of the rifle. I'm doing it with the safety closed now. I'll do it with the safety open next. All right, it's pretty much covered, so. Let's see how it does. I'm left-handed, which sucks. I'm gonna have to definitely switch to right for some of these tests because they're gonna be a little nastier than this, but I'll try this one left-handed. Worked just fine. And same thing for the AR-15. I got the dust cover closed. I'll open it after this. Got some on there. All right. So I'm getting blasted in the face with dirt, but they both worked just fine. I'm gonna open the dust cover on the AR-15 and see what that does. I got some directly on the bolt now, so. Thing with the AK is the dust cover is actually on top, but the safety, when it's in fire, it actually exposes the inside of the rifle. So I'm gonna open that up, and that's definitely gonna let a lot more debris in, but it also will kick a lot more out when you fire a round. So let's put some dirt on there and see how this does. All right, we got a bunch of it in there, so let's see. This will probably kick this out right in my face. Yep, ran just fine. So I actually didn't plan on this, but I just found some sand over here from when I did the sandbag videos back in the day, and I think this will be a tougher test than dirt because it's so fine that it's gonna get into more cracks and crevices inside the rifles. I'm sure you guys have seen the AK Operators Union when they do the sand tornado test, and every gun fails that test eventually. It's just a matter of time. So I'm not gonna do that, obviously, because I don't have anybody out here with me, but I am gonna put some of this sand on these rifles and see how they do. As you can see, super fine, super dry, so this should be a pretty tough test. So I'm gonna put you guys up here, and let's do it. I'm just gonna open the safety on the AK and the dust cover on the AR and get straight to it. So that's a lot of sand in there. I don't think this is gonna work. Wow, it actually worked, and it kicked every bit of that sand directly in my face. That's impressive. I didn't think that that would work. That's pretty cool. And I got the dust cover open on the AR as well. Now, the AR-15 has tighter tolerances than the AK, so there's not as much room for it to throw stuff out like we have with the AK. So I don't think this is gonna work either, but I was wrong with the AK. Let's see. It worked too, wow. I could actually feel the bolt moving inside the gun, which means it is slowing down, but I'm actually really surprised that that AR-15 worked. You can see how sandy that is in there, and I even see grains of sand inside those oil holes on the bolt, so that's pretty impressive. Now, if I really wanted to, I could just open up the action on these rifles and pour sand directly into them and probably make both of them jam. But I want to make this as realistic as possible, and that just doesn't seem very realistic to me. So far, both the AK and the AR have passed the dirt and the sand test, and that's with me opening the safety and the dust cover and just dumping it straight in there. So that's pretty impressive. I kind of wonder if maybe a lower quality AR-15 wouldn't have passed those tests. I know that they can definitely be a little more finicky, but maybe the high quality of the BCM is what got it through that kind of test when maybe a lower quality AR-15 wouldn't. I don't know. But I know that this next test is definitely a step up, and I think this is gonna be where we get an issue for sure. I got some gloves out for this one because this is gonna be an absolute mess, and I still have to operate these cameras. So we're gonna start with the AK-47, and I'm just gonna open the safety up again and slap some of this on there. This is gonna be so disgusting. I'm shooting this right-handed for sure, and let's see what it does. All right, so we had some kind of malfunction. Looks like just a failure to feed from a big chunk of mud in there. Got it out, and same thing. All right, we're getting failures to feed with the AK. So I'm gonna wash it off in here. Just dunked it in that water there. Put our magazine back in. And the bolt closed that time. And it worked. Now, to be fair, it's kind of hard to get as much mud in the AR-15 because it's just a more sealed off gun. So I don't think I'll be able to get it quite as nasty as I did the AK. But I'm just putting it straight on the bolt again. I mean, that's worst case scenario for both of these guns. You saw the AK, it did hiccup, but all I did was drop it in the water and cleaned it out, and it worked just fine. So let's see what the AR-15 does here. Looks like it didn't go all the way back and catch that round enough. By the way, I apologize for how dirty the lens is getting. I will clean it off. Okay. All right, it looks like it picked up a round. All right, same thing, it's not working. All right, that was a little harder to get open than the AK, and it seized up a couple of times where the AK, I just ran some water through it and it opened right up. So let's see if it works. Nope. That was an empty shell casing, so that looked like a failure to eject or extract. Same thing. This is still super sticky. I can feel how gritty it is in there. All right, it looks like the AR-15 is pretty much a one-shot rifle, and it's super hard to get that action open. So the AR-15 has given me a much harder time working that out of there and getting it back to working again. The AK, I just dropped it in the water, ran the action a couple times, and it looks like it's pretty much good to go. And the AR is still seized up pretty good. I ran it in the water and cycled the bolt, and it felt pretty smooth, and then I put a magazine back in it and it's jammed back up again. So let's take it over to the pond over here and see if we can clean it out. So this is my main camera that you guys are watching me on, and you can get an idea of just how much mud those rifles slung onto my nice expensive camera. So the bolt felt pretty smooth in there. I went ahead and dunked the magazine as well. There's still a little bit of mud along the frame there, but let's see. Chambered around, see if it fires. Still not cycling right. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and take this apart real quick. It feels really smooth, so I'm kind of starting to wonder if there's something in this magazine. Looks like we finally got it back in working order. So all I did was take the bolt out, and I didn't see anything on there. It actually looked really clean, but obviously there was something in there that was stopping it from moving all the way, and that's what I was talking about when I said the AK has looser tolerances, so it can afford to have stuff like that inside the action, and it will just either throw it out or work around it. Whereas the AR, the tiniest little piece of any debris in there can shut the rifle down. So a little bath in the frog pond, and we got the BCM back up and running. Well, I guess while we're over here, this gives us the chance to do a water submersion test. So I'm just gonna dunk these rifles in the pond, pull them out, let the barrel drain for just a second, and then unload the magazine. So let's start with the AK. It worked. Is my face a little wet? Well, I was gonna dry my face in my glasses, but I just figured I'm gonna get covered again anyway, so let's do the AR-15. Jam. Man, we're getting some weird failures to feed on this AR-15. It almost makes me wonder if there's still some mud left in the buffer tube. It's either not getting enough gas, or there's something in the buffer tube or somewhere in the action slowing that bolt down. So I'm gonna take it apart again and see if we can figure it out. All right, so I just took it apart and cleaned it at least as well as I can out here, so let's see if it works. I got my fingers crossed because I'm starting to get a little worried. Yeah! So it didn't lock the bolt to the rear, but it definitely cycled through all 5 rounds just fine, so that's a step in the right direction. So since the AK is technically our winner, let's give it a little victory lap and take a couple more shots with it. So you guys aren't going to believe this. I had 2 slow-mo cameras set up to capture that fireball, and they both died in the 30 seconds that it took me to take those shots. So I have the GoPro Hero 5, which I knew was almost dead, and the Sony RX100 Mark V, which is like a $1,000 camera, or it was when I bought it. And as soon as you turn the slow-mo on this camera, it dies almost every time. So I don't know why they even have it in there, but I captured no slow-mo of that giant fireball that I got, and I'm kind of upset about it, so what are you gonna do? But I'm gonna go ahead and wrap it up here, guys. Thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. Not scientific, obviously not scientific, but I will say that both of these rifles have been 100% reliable in the 4 or 5 years that I've owned them, and I've never had an issue out of either one of these guns that wasn't self-induced or caused on purpose. And the situations that I put these guns in today they're fun to do, and they're you know, a pretty common experiment that you see out there on the internet, but it's just unlikely that I'll ever be in a situation like that. And if I am, and a crap hits the fan situation, I guess I'm gonna go with an AK, but yeah, it's just unlikely that you'll ever have mud smeared all over the bolt of your rifle and stuff like that. But it is fun to do, and fun to see the results, and I hope that you guys enjoyed the video. The AR-15, even though it's an expensive AR-15, it's still an AR-15, and even though the AK is a cheap AK, it still is an AK. So there's only so much you can do within the design of an AR-15, and I just don't think that they'll ever be more reliable than a well-made AK. So kind of what I expected when I started this video, that the AK would probably win, because I know that that is a well-made AK. And although it was only $600, some of those older WASRs are about as good as any AK you can get. So not really surprised, but it was a fun video to come out and make, and I hope that you guys enjoyed it as well. If you did, please give it a thumbs up for me, guys. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time.